Hi everybody, it's Katie back with another episode of my vlog, and it's Sunday, so it's time for the Cinema Club Sunday Roundup. It's also the last Sunday before Christmas, so this week's Cinema Club was all Christmas movies. Surprise! You guys aren't surprised, right? We started the week with a brand new Christmas movie, actually the first new movie that I have watched since this whole pandemic started. Remember new movies, you guys? Wow, what an insane year 2020 has been. I've really been missing new movies, and every time I go past the movie theater, which is shut, I get a little more sad about not being able to go to the movie theater, but we have had a few new releases this year, despite the fact that there aren't any movie theaters. And the new Christmas movie that came out this year is Fatman, starring Mel Gibson and Walton Goggins. This is a kind of wacky, it plays it straight, but it gets a little funny as it goes. Action movie, a dark comedy, if you will, about a obnoxiously spoiled rich kid who hires a hitman to kill Santa after he gets a lump of coal instead of a present. Walton Goggins plays the hitman. Mel Gibson is Santa. Santa and his wife have fallen on hard times because they're not producing as many toys as they used to because kids just aren't as good as they used to be. Apparently, Santa's been operating under a government contract for years. And so he's not going to get paid the right amount of money because he's not producing the right amount of toys because kids aren't behaving. So the US government kind of has him over a barrel, and he has to be basically forced into taking a different government contract where he's manufacturing, I think it's control panels for fighter jets. So you already have Santa sort of being backed into a corner by this weird contract he has with the US government. And then when the hitman shows up at Santa's workshop and goes crazy, I don't want to say too much about what happens, but of course there's some amazing action sequences, some unexpected shoot 'em ups, and I'm definitely not going to tell you guys how this ends, but man, we had a ton of fun watching this movie. Is it the greatest movie of all time? Absolutely not. It's a totally fun, totally new Christmas movie though. And you guys know I love a good dark comedy. And I love anything that kind of takes traditional themes or tropes and does something kind of new with them. So the sort of cranky old Santa who's working for the government is kind of a new version of Santa. And I feel like the writing and Mel Gibson's acting in the role really portray this version of Santa to great effect. I will say Marianne Jean-Baptiste is in the Mrs. Claus role, and she is one of the best on-screen Mrs. Clauses I've ever seen. So if you're into different Christmas movies, if you're into weirder Christmas movies, dark comedies, or you just want to check out something brand new, oh my God, a new movie, I would definitely recommend watching Fatman. We had a ton of fun watching it, like I said, and it just slotted right in with our kind of like more wacky Christmas viewing that we do. So Hitman, 2020 movie, tons of fun. Everything else we watched this week is way older than that. We dialed it back to 1983 for the Christmas classic, A Christmas Story, directed by Bob Clark and of course written by Gene Shepard. This is kind of like one of America's favorite Christmas movies. I think probably just by sheer repetition because it gets played so often at Christmas time, and so many places have, or back before COVID, had showings of this movie at Christmas time. It's a great movie. It's really fun. It's very funny. It's like a series of little vignettes about this kid, Ralphie, who's growing up in a small town in the Midwest. And it takes place. They don't actually say when it takes place, but it's based on the clothes and the cars and what's happening. It seems like late 1940s. And if you've seen this movie, you'll remember all Ralphie wants for Christmas is a Red Ryder BB gun. And his parents don't want to get it for him. Everybody keeps saying to him, "You'll shoot your eye out," and so you can't have that. But it's not just about that. There's a series of playful vignettes about Ralphie and his family and his friends and sort of just life in the Christmas season in this small town. Excuse me. And it's just a little slice of his life. Apparently, it's based on semi-autobiographical writing by Gene Shepherd. So a lot of this stuff did happen, maybe not as exaggerated as we see it in the movie, but it's a great movie. It's a fun story, and the little stories within the story are told really well. I will say I have not watched this movie in several years. I mean, decades. I don't think I've watched it as an adult until just a few days ago. But I was able to remember the whole thing, like every major scene that had stuck in my head as a teenager, probably the last time I saw this movie. It was like I knew the entire thing as if I had watched it recently. It was wild how kind of plugged in and how much I knew the movie, how much of it I remembered. As always, my favorite scene in the whole movie is when Ralphie and his little brother go to see Santa at the department store, and they have to climb up the staircase and then go down the crazy slide. And the Santa to camera, ho, 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 you'll shoot your eye out, kid, part is just kind of cemented in my mind as what this movie is. So not going to say too much more about plot because, again, I'm assuming you guys have all seen this movie. But it was really fun to revisit it as an adult and to watch it with my kids. I love watching children's movies with my kids, and especially children's movies that really center the child's experience. A lot of movies for kids don't actually center the child's experience in the narrative, but this movie does it in spades. There's an adult narrator, actually, it's narrated by Gene Shepherd, the author, who's like looking back on himself as a child. And then, of course, the whole story is driven forward by the character of Ralphie. And his childish perspective of everything is the perspective that we get in the movie. So it's pretty great. I will note that Ralphie's parents don't have first names, and I always love when a child's perspective movie has that particular quirk, because why would adults have first names in a child's world, right? His dad is just the old man, and his mom like never gets referred to by anything but mom in the movie. So it's pretty fun. And again, I do really like movies that get into the child's perspective. I feel like a lot of adults forgot what it was like to be a kid, which is crazy to me. I remember it really well. I think it's part of what makes me a good mom. But anyhow, it really stands out when there's a movie made by adults, but really, really speaks to the child perspective and the child experience of life. So definitely check out A Christmas Story. If you've never seen it, you owe it to yourself just to know about it. It's such a piece of popular culture at this point. But it's also a really good movie, and it's a really good Christmas movie. So definitely check it out if you've never seen it. Definitely recommend revisiting it if you haven't watched it in a while. Maybe you're the type of person who watches it every year. I'm not, but that's fine. Do you guys love this movie? Let me know. The next night after we watched A Christmas Story, we watched one of our family favorites that we watch every year around here, which is Ernest Saves Christmas. 1988, directed by John R. Cherry, who directed all of the Ernest movies, starring Jim Varney as Ernest. And there's a couple of side characters. I can never remember what their names are. The two guys who handle, in this movie, they're the freight operation who has to receive the sleigh and the reindeer and take care of them until Santa's elves show up. Ernest Saves Christmas is a weird Christmas movie. It's more of an Ernest movie than a Christmas movie, but it's a very earnest Christmas movie. And by that, I don't mean like Ernest P. Worrell. I mean like it's full of heart and love, and it's very earnestly a positive Christmas movie. It's got a teen runaway character in it who at first is going by the name Harmony, but it turns out her real name is Pamela. And she's kind of a bad girl it's established at the beginning she's trying to dine and ditch at a restaurant. She's probably been shoplifting. She's run away from home. she gets somehow taken in by Ernest. They meet up and join forces together. But meanwhile, Ernest has met the real Santa Claus, who is in town in Orlando, where it takes place, to find a guy who is a children's television host who Santa wants to tap to become the new Santa. So the whole movie revolves around Santa trying to get at this guy, Joe Carruthers, to get a meeting with him. But meanwhile, Joe is being whisked from one agent's office to another movie set, to this place, to that place. He's very busy and he doesn't have the time to sit down and talk to Santa and like really hear about this job offer. So Ernest has to help Santa to get Joe on the right page. Meanwhile, Santa's lost his sack, the magic sack full of toys and treats. And Ernest and Harmony/Pamela have picked up the sack, and so they have to take care of it and get it back to Santa. A bunch of other stuff goes down, but it's very heartwarming. In the end, everything turns out correctly, just as you would expect it to, including the runaway teen coming back with the sack, which she has stolen, as she's had a change of heart right at the end. And Santa, of course, has believed in her this whole time. I'm basically spoiling the movie for you guys, which is totally against my rules, but it's in service of this beautiful movie. It's so heartwarming. I cry every time when Pamela brings the magic sack back to Santa. This movie is goofy as hell. It's an Ernest movie. It's stupid. It's slapstick. It's Jim Varney doing like the 1,000 Faces of Ernest in all his different costumes, trying to get away with things. It's ridiculous comedy about flying reindeer. It's got elves, it's got Santa, it's got all this kind of goofy stuff. But at its heart, it's this very tender, very sweet Christmas movie. Like I said, it's very earnest. It has a lot of love in it. It has a lot of heart to it. So it's definitely right there in the Ernest catalog with all the other ones. But this is definitely the most heartwarming, most Christmassy, if you will, of all of them. I did note it's also the top grossing of all of them. So the one that actually did the best. I don't actually think it's the best one. I think Ernest Goes to Camp is probably the best one, but that's not a Christmas movie. So that's not what we're talking about today. If anything I said has rung your bells, please, please do watch Ernest Saves Christmas. It is one of my favorite Christmas movies. Like I said, we watch it every year. It always makes me cry. It is just a wonderful movie. It's goofy enough for kids, seriously heartwarming enough for stodgy old adults. It'll melt your heart of ice this Christmas season. I'm seriously recommending Ernest Saves Christmas. All right. And the last movie we watched this week, speaking of America's favorite Christmas movies, we took a stab at It's a Wonderful Life, of course, from 1946, directed by Frank Capra, starring James Stewart, Donna Reed, Lionel Barrymore, and a whole bunch of other people. Apparently, in my research for this vlog, I found out that It's a Wonderful Life was actually a box office bomb. It didn't do well at all. It was totally unpopular when it came out. It wasn't until decades later when, due to some legal maneuvering and wrangling and someone failing to renew the copyright on the movie, it entered the public domain. And so in the mid-1970s, 30 years after this movie was made, it started being shown regularly on television during the Christmas season. And It's a Wonderful Life is a great, great film. But I think similar to A Christmas Story, it has become one of America's favorite Christmas movies just through the sheer power of saturation. It was everywhere in the 80s on TV. I remember as a kid, you couldn't turn on a TV at Christmas time and not see it. And that's because all these stations could run it without paying any royalties. And so they ran it over and over and over again. So a lot of people got a lot of exposure to this movie, like I said, in the 1980s. And so as a result, it's a lot of people's favorite Christmas movie. But then a lot of people are kind of experienced oversaturation and have like It's a Wonderful Life damage, where they're like, oh God, I can't stand it. I'm never watching it again. So some people are super into it. Some people never want to see it. So I hadn't watched it. Similar to A Christmas Story, I had not seen this movie since I was a teenager. Went back and watched it with the kids a few nights ago. It was amazing. I remembered that it was a good movie, but it was so good. It was so well done. It was so well told. And of course, so well acted by Jimmy Stewart. I mean, he carries the whole movie. The other actors are incredible, don't get me wrong, but he's like the only person who could play George Bailey and have you believe it, right? If for some reason you don't know what the story of It's a Wonderful Life is, we have the story of a man, George Bailey. You kind of get a sketch of his entire life up until Christmas Eve, when the main action of the movie takes place. He's gotten himself into some trouble. He runs a financial institution called the Building and Loan, and he's lost track of $8,000, which doesn't seem like a lot of money, but boy, in 1946 it was. And he is about to get arrested and thrown in jail for embezzling the company money. His uncle actually misplaced it, but that's irrelevant for the story. At this point, he basically loses his shit and contemplates killing himself. Right at the moment when he's about to throw himself off of a bridge, an angel who's been assigned in a very cheesy sequence at the beginning of the movie where he's like talking to God in outer space. Bad filmmaking decision, but okay. The angel Clarence throws himself into the river instead of George Bailey being able to commit suicide, because Clarence, the angel, knows that if he tries to kill himself, George Bailey is a good enough guy. He'll jump in and save him, and then that will save George Bailey. So they get out of the water. The angel tells George Bailey he's an angel. Of course, George doesn't believe him at all. And George is saying, I wish I was dead. I wish I had never been born. And the angel says, aha, here's a great opportunity. I'm going to show you what your life, or what life in your community would have been like if you had never been born. So now George finds himself pushed into this alternate reality where he has never lived. And there's a very short sequence where he's basically completely freaking out over what's happened to the lives of all the people that he loves, because he hasn't been there to affect a positive change in their lives. So after being shown this bad alternate reality, he manages to get back to his real reality, where he goes running home, reunites with his family, tearful, joyous. The whole community shows up to come and bail him out of this trouble that he's in, because he's been bailing people out of their trouble for his entire lifetime. He's always put other people in front of himself. And the big lesson of the movie is that when push comes to shove and he needs his community, they've got his back. So it's an incredible film, incredibly well acted and directed, an incredible story. It's a family first, community first, choose life, anti-suicide story, which is pretty massive, especially for 1946. It's very explicit also for 1946. I did notice right before the movie rolled, we got the little warning up in the corner, and it said, foul language, drug use, adult situations. And I was like, whoa, Frank Capra. But all that stuff is in the film. But yeah, it's an incredible movie. And I know I just told you guys the whole plot again, but like, who doesn't know the plot of It's a Wonderful Life? I will say there is a colorized version. Don't watch it. Watch the original black and white. You'll thank me. Don't be afraid to watch black and white movies. If you are, please try watching some black and white movies. You will not regret it. Black and white, it's incredible. Don't be scared if there's no color there. So that's my pitch for It's a Wonderful Life. If you have some kind of It's a Wonderful Life damage, if you saw it too many times as a kid or something, and you haven't watched it in a long time, maybe give it another try. It was a lot better than I expected it to be. Usually things that are the most popular are not the most popular with me, but this one is just an incredible movie. I'll also note, I found out in my research, it was Frank Capra's favorite of all of his movies, and he did screen it for his family every year at Christmas time. So I thought that was touching. All right, so that's what we've watched this last week. Now, coming up next week, we have the end of our Christmas season of movies. So I'm going to tell you guys what we're going to be watching in case you want to watch along with us. Tonight, we're doing Miracle on 34th Street, the original, no remakes. Then we're doing The Year Without a Santa Claus, that really weird stop motion animated one. That is a stone cold classic around here that we watch almost every year. Sometimes it's every other year, but the whole heat miser, snow miser thing, man, the kids are really into it. Then we are going for the original How the Grinch Stole Christmas, and of course, A Charlie Brown Christmas. And my absolute favorite Christmas movie of all time, Mr. Magoo's Christmas Carol. Just wouldn't be Christmas without that one. And our goal is to have all of our Christmas viewing done by the end of the day on Christmas Eve, because we always switch gears and do Kung Fu movies on Christmas Day. So what do you guys have on the rest of your Christmas movie list? I'm super curious what your favorites are. Will you be joining us and watching some of these other movies next week? I'd love to hear what your favorite Christmas movie traditions are. All right, you guys, thanks so much for watching. I will be back in a few more days with another episode of my vlog. Until then, stay safe and take care out there.